And at this time, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who come in late, we are now having a little cooking session right here on the scene, putting the pot on in here. And we like for you to join in with us and have a ball.
Hi, this is Dara. Welcome back. In this episode, we're going to be talking about our content types and schemas and how I want to set that up in my pattern library. So let's go ahead and just dive in by linking our pattern table as usual. All right, so content type. Now I'm going to back up for a minute because there's two different contents. Now I use the word type, but types that I'm going to have. There's a content type and there's a schema. So a content type is going to have kind of, if you think about it, the information that you need to construct a particular element. So for instance, to have a recipe, here are all the things that my recipe is going to have. A schema is more of a list that's going to be input to that. So for instance, if I want to track, here's another way to put it. Let's say I'm doing doctor's offices and I want to do locations. So in my location, I have a schema that it's the states. It's always the same 50 states all the time. I don't need to kind of repeat that every time I build out my content type. I could just say, go look up the schema for states and pull in that state, right? So I'm going to have content types, I'm going to have schemas. This content type for locate that doctor's office is going to be all the elements. You know, who are the doctors, where, you know, what's the street address, what's the phone number, what's the email, what's the website, right? That would be the content type. So that's going to be the difference between a content type and a schema. I'm going to call them both as patterned content types. No, I actually do want to make that. I do want to make that difference. So I'm going to call this the content type, and then I'm going to have the type of schema. But I don't think I need a template for the schema. So let's just go ahead and just put, because each schema might have its own way of organizing, right? Like a state's just going to be a list of states. So I'm not going to create a template for schemas. I'll just have schemas. All right, so again, rename me. And the things that I'm going to want here is going to be an ID. Name. Now, interesting enough, so you saw me do the table with the content specifications for components. You could pull in some of that information into either the page or the component, depending on how you lay this out. Like you can swap it to be the spec view of the thing by just pulling in the same table. So instead of having two tables with similar information, you could just have it two views. So the content view and then the specification view. So one of the difference with the content view is it's geared more towards what the author needs to know, where the spec view is geared towards what the developer needs to know. So for instance, this is my title. It's going to be an H1. That might be important to the author, but like if I had an on-page label that they're not authoring, I probably don't need to put that. Or what's another way to say it? So, okay, the author needs, no, I don't want to say that. No. The author doesn't need to know, for instance, the visual specifications of something, but the developer does. The developer kind of needs to know all of the information, but the author only needs limited information. So they need to know like the name, the field type. They need to know their restrictions. And that's pretty much the information they need. I'm going to go ahead and fill out the table further because I'm going to build it with the idea that I might pull in the same table when I get to the page that uses this content type, and then flip the view so that it's a spec view versus a authoring view. So searchable just means for the developer, like, is this a field I'm going to search on? So I'm going to look at maybe the title. I'm going to search in the description. I might search like maybe one of the tags. So if this is my recipe, the allergens, I might search for those allergens. So it just mark whether that's a field that we search. Okay, and so maybe I have another view that's the spec view. And for that, I'm going to have everything open, but then, I said sept. And then for this default view, this is the authoring. And then maybe on this view, I hide some of these things. I don't know what's going to be comments. Maybe comments are fine. Maybe we have two comments for authors, comments for developers. Let's do that. We might, in the properties, put something like and then this way, if the thing is an authored thing, it will show up in the authoring view, and we can probably just do a little filter here that says if authored is not or is checked, then you show it. Otherwise, if it's not checked, and then the spec view, we don't actually, developers should know that, so we can keep that column there. But yeah, this is how we would hide how we would hide things that the authors don't need to worry about. I'm kind of doing this in abstract because, I'm kind of talking about this as a new thing because we've done these as separate pieces, but now that I've got it into Notion, I'm trying to think about how we can tie them together. And even in the Notion web work we've done so far, like with our library, on my current project, we didn't tie these two things together because the content types, we did all that work before we built the library, so we weren't doing them in tandem. So they were two separate efforts. So now I'm trying to imagine what it would be like if we made them the same effort. So this is theory. It may work to flip it this way. I won't actually know until I try to use it. But anyway. All right, so that gives us, let's go back to this, and we want to filter. Oh wait, I need to, no, I did create that content type. Now I've got untitled here. I want to filter by the pattern type is content. And I'm actually going to put some kind of and this wouldn't necessarily be the working team needing to know this information, but other people who are coming in using this after, like the working team, should agree on this nomenclature. Did I make this full width? I did not. So if you were even just able to change the default view and not create a new view, then that would solve a lot of problems as well. Let's do the same thing over here. Okay. Now the last bit is going to be the responsive layouts. And so what I mean here is, let's pull up an example of responsive layout. Okay, so by responsive layouts, I mean something like this. So, on the desktop, this is going to be laid out this way. It's got a left rail and body content, but on mobile, this left rail is going to move up, right? So that might be one of the layouts that I'm talking about. So by coding out this page, like whether you're doing, like a static site generator with just pure HTML, CSS, or whether you're doing a CMS with actual like layouts. I think on Drupal they're called page layouts. On Tridian and Sitecore, I think they're called CMS templates. But whatever you're calling them, if you create your page structures first, then and you call to that structure, then you don't have to figure out each time what happens, right? If you say, okay, I'm using, let's say this is template number 3, right? Layout number 3. If I'm using layout number 3, I know automatically if I put stuff in here, when it's in mobile, it's up here. When it's in it's desktop, it's here, right? So I can figure that out beforehand and not have to do that each time. Or, for example, a difference I would do here is this might be my layout page for search, where my search filters come up here. And maybe there's some mechanism that allows them to be smaller on this side than they are on this side. But then maybe for, if I do something where I have a tertiary navigation, then maybe I'm saying that this doesn't even show up on the mobile because I've got that mobile hamburger, and so my navigation is all in the hamburger and I'm just seeing body content. So this is the kind of thing that I want to keep track of and know of ahead of time. So when I'm designing out a page, I already know which of these layouts it's going to belong to. Okay, or I'm going to be assigning it to a layout. All right, so let's go ahead and, our trusty little overview text here. All right, so for the regions template, let's make this full width, thank you. Okay, so for regions template, okay, so for the responsive layouts template, things we want to track. And I'm just going to default this to that, all of them are going to have a header, footer. So I usually just call the header, footer A and B. That way, when we go along, the numbers will conflict with that. And if you have something else that's always there, like, you can also, like, maybe there's a sub footer, you can use that as the alpha as well. I'm just doing this as an example so they'll know what to put. And then you can even link in here a list of the pages that use this. And you can do that two ways. So if you do a group on the pages, right? So let's see, we haven't created any pages yet. Let's just do a search. We know we're going to have a search page. And let's create, so let's change this to the home page. And then we have like region 1. Template. Okay, so then you can do something where you say like pages that use this region are all, actually let's delete this so I can do it in the template. Hold on. And somehow I have this untitled template to get rid of that. We don't need to keep track of the documents as here. Now this is actually, I'm building this out now, but now that I'm thinking about it, this isn't gonna work, because once we're not using the template, we're not going to be able to do that. So instead, what I want to do is I'm going to add the pages. So let's get rid of this. Okay, so then when I do this regions page here, I keep calling it regions because that's what we're calling in our local, on our current contracts. I'm going to say at home, and then that's how it's going to link there. And I can delete this. Okay. Okay, so that's all the pieces of our library. The whole thing is now built out. In the next video, we're going to actually use this. So we're going to show like how we're doing our sprint work and how it's connected together to the library as a task to do the work, and show like the actual creation of some library elements in here. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you next time.